Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be with you today and to discuss this really urgent problem that we now face in India. It's a problem that has been growing for many years, really. Uh, as you may know, all of you who are listening, the current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, was prior to that Chief Minister of Gujarat. And when he was chief minister of Gujarat in 2002, he oversaw a massive genocidal massacre of Muslims in Gujarat that killed at least 1,000 people, and yet did nothing. And in fact, at that very time, it became very clear that his base, if you will, his political base, was the base that is held by the RSS, which is an extremist Hindu organization. It is the organization, in fact, that was the home of Godse, who was the person who assassinated Mahatma Gandhi. So this is an organization that has been filled with hate ever since it was founded. It is basically a neo-Nazi organization, and in fact admired Hitler. So what we have here is a person who comes out of an organization that itself is an extremist organization. The most palpable way in which this is expressed is the doctrine of Hindutva, which is the doctrine that India should not be a secular country. It should be a Hindu country, and that people who are not Hindus are really outsiders. They are foreigners. They are invaders. This, of course, completely ignores the fact that India has more Muslims than even Pakistan, 200 million Muslims in India. It is one of the largest Muslim countries in the world. And it also has, of course, a lot of other religious faiths, including Christianity. So this doctrine of Hindutva is directly contrary to the Constitution of India. It is directly contrary to the tradition that Mahatma Gandhi represented, that Nehru represented, in fact, that has been dominant in most of Indian history since India became a democracy at independence in 1947. What's happened, though, is that this democracy has been taken over by an extremist party. The BJP, which is Modi's party, is dominated by people who are advocates of Hindutva, that is, of Hindu dominance in India. And this is now becoming more and more evident as leaders of this movement, the Hindutva movement, are passing one law after another to dominate and to suppress other religious groups. The religious groups that have been most affected most recently have been Muslims and Christians, but there are other religious groups as well. The anti-conversion laws that are present in at least 10 Indian states, for example, make it a crime to convert from one religion to another. And of course, this is a direct violation of religious freedom. We would never put up with this kind of a law in the United States or any democracy or any place that values religious freedom. Of course, people should have the freedom to determine their own religious faith. And yet in India, if you convert from being, for example, a Hindu to a Muslim or vice versa, or to be from Hindu to being a Christian, you can actually be arrested for it. So what we have here is a diminution in the democratic tradition of India. Now that has played itself out in a couple of Indian states most directly. One place has been Assam, where a large number of Muslim immigrants who were fleeing the Bangladesh Civil War in 1971 came across the border into Assam. Probably at least 3 million people and settled in Assam. And the result was that people in Assam became resentful of them and began movements to see if there was a way to push them back into Bangladesh. Well, frankly, that was a way of saying, you are not us, you are other, you are foreigners in our country, we want to push you out. And so what happened was then India passed laws, citizenship laws, which mandated a census, especially in Assam, but the Hindutva people want to do it all over India, in Assam, to determine if you were truly an Indian. And in order to be a truly Indian person, you had to prove that you had papers that showed you and your family had already been in India before 1971. The very clear targets of this were the immigrants from Bangladesh. If you couldn't prove that you had those papers, and a lot of people, of course, can't come up even with papers, even if they've lived there for many, many, many generations. I mean, how many people keep lots of papers around in their houses? They lose them, and they have all kinds of ways in which they can be denied citizenship. The idea was to deny citizenship to these Muslim people. We should learn from this, because as Hannah has just pointed out, the very first stage of genocide is classification. If you can deny somebody their citizenship, you classify them as an other, as an outgroup, as a foreigner, as somebody who doesn't have the civil rights of the country that they are part of. Because of this classification, which was the whole objective of this census, then these people could be declared foreigners and then deported. So that is exactly what is underway in Assam. They've even built prisons to hold people who, can't prove they were Indian citizens between 1971. The other thing that the Modi government did is it took away the special status of Kashmir, which had been agreed to right after independence, and right in the Constitution, actually, in Articles 370 and 35A of the Constitution, in which Kashmir became a kind of an autonomous state in India that governed itself in many ways. They dissolved that status, and the objective has been essentially to crush any kind of a movement to resume autonomous status for Kashmir, also to crush, of course, attempts to carry out a referendum on Kashmir's status that was mandated, in fact, by UN resolution, but has never been carried out. The result, in other words, has been, again, to oppress and suppress Muslims, who are the majority in Kashmir. Now we see it again, this time in Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. These are areas where the extremists are especially strong. And as we saw in the conference in Hardwar in December, where Hindu priests actually called for the murder of Muslims, they said, and I'm quoting, "We must arm and we must be prepared to kill." Now, when we have that kind of warning, and that is what we call incitement to genocide. Incitement is a crime under the Genocide Convention. And when you have that kind of incitement, it is the preparation stage for genocide. Preparation is, as Hannah has already pointed out, what we consider to be the seventh stage. And after that comes persecution. And we've already seen some of the persecution, the massacres. We've seen discrimination also against Muslims and so forth. So these stages of genocide, which are not linear, as Hannah has pointed out, they occur simultaneously. Many of them are already present in India today. We should be watching out. We should be crying genocide emergency for India. And that is, in fact, what Genocide Watch has done for both Assam and for Kashmir, and we are about to do for Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, because we believe there is a real risk of massacres. What is, of course, extremely troubling here is that the Modi government has stood back, said nothing, and will be very happy to just watch it happen. That is exactly what Modi did in Gujarat 2002. It is what he will do again. So this massacre, this genocide, will likely not be even carried out by the Indian state. It will likely be carried out by mobs, just as the genocide was carried out during partition in 1947. So that is why Genocide Watch has declared a genocide emergency for India. We believe that India is at the persecution stage right now. That's the stage right before genocide.
Gregory Stanton.
What do you do?
Like a psychologist, sociologist, Genocide Watch.
Yes, thank you
I
so
don't
much.
know exactly. I think he wrote a book on the stages of genocide. Pretty much.
I'm getting a little bit of, I think someone's,
He's a professor.
Zainab, please mute yourself. Oh, sorry about that, Dr. Stanton. Please go ahead.
Oh, actually, I have finished.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this. But you know what we need to do now is we need a real action campaign. We've got to bring this to the attention of the Congress of the United States, just as we did, and Nadine was, one of the supporters of this, when we got Congress to declare unanimously that ISIS was committing genocide in Iraq and Syria. Prior to that, the US government was really standing back, and that resolution had a big effect, which finally passed in 2016. We moved the denial of that by the legal office in the State Department, and we moved away from that and got Secretary of State Kerry to actually declare this, that they were committing genocide. And it has had an impact. Not only did we defeat ISIS, but then we also have appropriated funds to resettle people who ISIS, has driven out of their homes. So that is the kind of action I would like to see on this crisis in India. Now, we will be up against all kinds of pressure. We have a lot of economic relations with India, and a lot of companies will lobby against this. So we are going to have to be well organized to make this happen.